Welcome to Conveyancing Matters with Lorraine and Stu. Join us for a chat about all things property.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another Conveyancing Matters. Hello, Lorraine, how are you?
Good, thanks, lovely. How are you? You're looking a little bit of the night in your black shirt there, buddy.
You know, I know. Trying to make an effort and all that. and today we welcome Maurice Kilbride. Hi, Maurice, how are you?
Morning, Stuart. Morning, Lorraine.
Hi,
very
Maurice.
well, thank you. And if I'd known it was shirt and tie, I'd put my tie on. I mean, it's very formal this morning.
You could have made an effort, Maurice. Goodness me, I thought.
Yeah, the thing is, actually, Maurice, you don't know that Stu's sitting there in his underpants, so don't be too.
Oh, dear, please.
Well, I didn't want to say anything. I didn't want a tracksuit bottom, surely.
Maurice,
Yeah.
I'm really delighted that you've been able to join us on Conveyancing Matters. I came across you on Twitter in particular because you seem to have a chunky old Twitter following. So I wonder, perhaps as a start, if you want to just sort of briefly tell, for the benefit of the viewers who don't know who you are, who you are, what you're about, setting up in business and thing that interests me with your lovely boys. So do tell.
Gosh, yeah. Well, it's a long backstory, but I'll try and condense it. I fell into a state agency actually by chance. I was studying at university to be a journalist, and I was in my final year, and I'd got a job at the Daily Telegraph as a junior reporter, and which is so my mother has never forgiven me. She still goes on about it now, by the way. And over the summer, I was starting in the end of the year. So after I'd taken my exams, I decided to go and work for my cousin who had an estate agency in Altrincham, where I was from, Altrincham, near Hale. And he was a very flamboyant character, very suave, good-looking guy, drove all the latest cars. He had a Ford Capri and a TR7 for our older viewers who will remember these when they were trendy. Stuart, you'll be far too young for these. And a string of leggy blonde women in and out the office. And as a 19-year-old, I was intoxicated. I thought this was the life. Sadly, it wasn't quite like that for me, but I just loved it. I fell into it. Didn't take my job at the Telegraph. As I say, my mother's never forgiven me for it. I worked for Andrew for a few years and moved around a couple of the independents. Went to a corporate and then was headhunted by Countrywide. Where I worked my way through the ranks at Countrywide. I was a director of Countrywide for 3 years. So I've seen all the shenanigans that have gone on with Countrywide and watched with interest as to what's happening with that company. And then 21 years ago, I decided I'd had enough of corporate life. I could do this better myself. And I set up my office in Cheadle with absolutely nothing, no houses, no nothing. It was a struggle 7 days a week for probably 3 years, where I absolutely, did everything, pounded the streets, visited every house, I think dropping leaflets, doing all the things that we did, and built up, hopefully a reasonably good business. Last year, my eldest lad, who's eventually going out to work in South Korea, but unfortunately, because of his situation, hasn't been able to go out. He joined the business, and 2 years before that, after he left school, my middle lad, Joe, he joined the business, which was fantastic. I was a bit dubious because I thought, not sure about father and son, and we used to clash a little bit. He's a little bit too much like me for my liking, and I wasn't convinced it was the right thing for him to do, to come straight in to his first job. My other two lads are really academic, but he wanted to come in. And my office junior left. Never forgiven her either for that, because there was a door there open and he was, can I come and see how I get on? Give me a month. If you met him, you'd understand he can peck head until you just give in. All right, okay, we'll give it a month. We'll see how it goes. And you know what? He's transformed. He's come in and he's done a terrific job. He now runs the sales for me. Just turned 20, but he, I'm not just saying because he's my son, but he has done a brilliant job, and he's transformed a lot of things we're doing. He's given me a kick up the backside as well to carry on and keep going. And as I say, this will be my 33rd year, my God, in agency. So 20 years we've had the business. and I've been doing the job 33 years. So.
Oh, fantastic. I love the idea of your lovely boys coming in, because that really comes across from, you know, your stuff on social media, Maurice. But I feel bound to ask, actually, you know, if you were going to start off as a journo, does that mean for you that, in a way, the sort of social media thing, which I have to say, you know, I suspect we're of a similar age, and I, you know, I kind of do Twitter and LinkedIn, you know, because I slightly feel that I have to. But for you, with your background and you know, journalism as your aspiration, did the social media thing represent, you know, did that just all make sense to you in that sense?
Absolutely not.
Twitter, you do the blog stuff, so how does, you know, did that have any effect on you?
I always remember seeing Twitter when it started, because obviously that was much later than my journalistic career, which was incredibly short. But I always like writing, so I write a lot of my own blogs, and I enjoy, you know, that sort of side of keeping my hand in, I guess, in writing. And my aspiration is to write a book, and I'm halfway through doing my anecdotal stories and things to doing a book. That's my ultimate goal, is to write a book before I hang my tape measure up. But social media came out, and I remember seeing Twitter and thinking, oh, I'm not sure about this. It's a load of Z-list celebrities putting on information about who cares? This will never take off. But then I remember starting to speak to a few people, and I don't know if you've ever come across a lady called Samantha Ashdown.
I haven't, no, but
she's an estate agent and an estate agency trainer, and she was very big on social media at the time. And I started following one or two estate agents. Michael Day was another one very early on, and so it was, you know, it's quite interesting listening to these people. They're in the same industry. They talk about things that I'm interested in. They post articles. I don't think I've got anything interesting to say, but I'll listen and watch for a while, and then slowly but surely, I did one or two comments, and very, very polite ones in those days. I was a lot more polite than I am now. And it just slowly built up from there. And you know, I'm very proud of the fact we've now got, you know, quite a significant following. And none of it is, it's all organic as well. None of it has ever been bought. They're all people that have come along. Hopefully they've liked the stuff. What I have always tried to do is keep it real and not, you know, I mix it up a little bit. There's some social stuff. There's stuff that's very much that I'm passionate about in the industry. There's also a few bits about football and things that I'm also passionate about.
Yeah. I always just like flick by football.
Yeah, it's not for everybody, but I will talk about subjects that, you know, I like to think it's very personal, and that people can see the real you, because there's a lot of smoke and mirrors on social media, I think, and I like to think I've always tried to keep it real.
Yeah. Well, actually, Stu, that's certainly what you've said, particularly about us doing this, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I think people buy into people, don't they? And as you've quite rightly said, Maurice, there's all kinds of different agendas that can be behind social media for all different kind of reasons. But I've in the past used social media in exactly the same way. You know, if people don't like the fact I support Tottenham, so be it. Who cares? You know, but it just.
I didn't know that. We can have a great conversation as a City fan.
Sorry, I've got a bit of frog in my throat. But yeah, no. So it's an interesting way, the way people use social media, and of course, if you speak to different marketing guys and stuff like that, there's all kind of tactical sort of rationale behind what people do. But we don't do anything like that. We just punt it out. We are who we are, kind of thing.
Well, when I went on my first training course, I did some training on it, because I thought I've got to be very careful here, because you're now putting yourself out there. You can put your foot in it. And I remember the trainer saying very early on, Maurice, the three things you don't talk about: football, religion, and politics. And sadly, I don't talk about religion, but the other two I sadly do get involved with, maybe sometimes too often. But you know, I like to say keep it personal and try and be real with it. I'm trying to be just very honest with people. So it's the real you, because I think there was a lot of that people aren't real when you see them on social media. I've met a lot of people who I've spoken to, and they're nothing like how they come across in their social accounts.
Oh, that's interesting.
Okay. So there's a lot of maybe falseness with it, which is very sad, really. But that's just how it is.
Well, that was one of the reasons that I thought it would be interesting to talk to you, because what's come out of our conversations in more recent times, particularly in the sort of conveyancing maelstrom that we're all in, Maurice, and you know, Stu will talk about it, is but you know, just that importance of relationships between conveyancers and agents. And I know, despite the fact, Stu, you're a sort of national organisation now, that's still a big deal for you, I think.
Yeah, well, there's so many different facets of conveyancing now, but we've always sort of adopted the bread and butter attitude that, you know, the local estate agent that may give us between 5 and 10 matters a month, or what we sort of try and maintain, and that's a business that we like to take on. I was taught at a very, very young age when I just started in a law firm. I think I was 17. I think one of the very first things I was told was you're better off having hundreds of people giving you 5 matters a month and keeping those relationships strong, rather than one relationship with one big person giving you sort of 1,000 matters a month, you know, that kind of thing. And that always sort of stuck with me throughout my professional career. And we've always replicated that here. You know, we've got in excess of 300 work referrers. And although there's the time element, trying to manage, you know, 300 different people, we find building those relationships, they're much more long-term, shall we say. And I think especially at times like this, you know, when we're all up against it, having those strong relationships can be really, really, really beneficial when you're stuck in chains, or, you know, you need to get help insofar as you might have a difficult client or a difficult situation. You know, the agent is there to help, which I think we all forget sometimes.
It's yeah, it's a peculiar one, isn't it? Because it's an age-old problem, and I've listened to the other people who've been on your show, and it's the same conversation in many respects. That it's like anything. I think, and I'm one of those people. You'll find that I'm very much a defender of the conveyancers, because, you know, they seem to have come in for a lot of unnecessary and unfair flack, and are doing, you know, from a lot of quarters. And there's been an awful lot of blaming going on right across the industries, pointing fingers, which doesn't help. You know, we have all got to work together. You're absolutely right. And there are, like anything, there are good agents, there are not some poor agents, there are good solicitors, there are solicitors who don't even now particularly want to communicate with agents, which I find incredibly frustrating, but it is what it is. But you're absolutely right. A collaborative effort, and more understanding of everybody's role within the conveyancing, can only be a good thing.
Yeah,
That's why I find it really difficult sometimes, because the point you've hit on there is that, you know, you're going to find good and bad in every industry. But it seems to be with the conveyancing aspect, there's always a focus on things being our fault. But you know, going back to the point I made earlier, we deal with many estate agents of all different ilks, from very traditional high street to very online, you know, one spectrum to the other. And you know, we find some are great, some are not so, and someone's a fourth. And it's probably exactly the same, you know, from agent to lawyer. There's probably no difference.
Yeah, absolutely. There are some terrific lawyers out there that we love to work with, because the communication is two-way. You know, they will say to us, you know, can you do this for us? Can you help us with this? This is what we need. This is what we're doing. There is an education need, I think, in our industry particularly, because I don't think we fully understand what conveyancers do. A lot of people don't, and what pressures they have, and why they have to do things maybe more methodically than we do. And similarly, on the legal, I think solicitors sometimes need to understand that agents can assist them, and can be a help to them if they will use them in the right way, rather than thinking, do I have to speak to that agent? Nuisance.
Funny enough, you should say, I always have a criticism of lawyers, and it's not sort of me criticising lawyers, you know, as a general. It's you know, even the guys that work for me as well, I'm critical of them in the same respect, and that is that as an industry, we don't sell ourselves enough. You know, we are lawyers by trade, so we're great at looking for a lease and finding out that it's defective, but rarely do we actually tell people what we're doing. I often think that that's half the problem. You know, tell somebody about this big problem you found with the lease, and tell them what you're going to do to sort it out. If you actually could make that point, whether it be to an estate agent, to a client, I think as a general, I think we'd get more sympathy. I think, you know, so often I see that the guys in the office are sort of trawling through this problem, trawling through that problem, sorting this out, sorting that out, but we rarely sort of explain the extent you know, of what we've done and the levels that we've gone to. Quite often it's just, well, this has happened, got this indemnity policy, it's all sorted. But actually, you know, you could have elaborated and gone through the days of work, the documents you had to look through to get to this point, the fact that that would have stopped you selling that property, and now the sale can proceed because of what you've done.
I absolutely, and I remember probably about 5 years ago this would have been, even before all of what, you know, where we are now. I invited 5 local firms of solicitors to come in, different people at the firms, and said, does anybody at your firm want to come in, have a chat with my staff, explain the processes, explain what you guys do and what we can do to make your lives easier. Not one of them wanted to take me up on it, which at the time was really disappointing.
It's really interesting you say that, Maurice, because you know, I'm a trainer, obviously in conveyancing, and I worked, well, it was a damn shame actually for a big legal training company called Central Law Training. Unfortunately, they went out of business last August, which was a damn shame because there were some lovely people there. But what's interesting, and maybe they were kind of the wrong people pitching it to the market, but you know, I've tried on more than one occasion to actually essentially offer exactly what you've said, sort of conveyancing training to estate agents. And as I say, maybe I wasn't going about it the right way, but it's interesting because you know, it kind of, you know, goes the other way because, you know,
absolutely.
People don't, you know, people didn't seem to want it, to be fair. And I suppose the big boys would say, well, you know, we've got that covered, albeit, of course, you know, I'm unconvinced that that's the case because I think it is about education, irrespective of, you know, by whom, because of course, as you well know, Maurice, I mean, you don't need us to tell you, but one of the big bugbears is, and it links into what Stu's just said, it's the agent that rings up for the sale chase. You say, for example, you know, the local search is in today, and then they say, well, will you be exchanging today then? Well, actually, no, because, you know, the road's not adopted. There's a tree preservation order. You know, there's a garage gone up without any planning permission. It's that kind of lack of understanding. And then they'll ring up, you know, 2 days later, where you've had your search for 2 days now. Can we exchange now? And of course, and you know, you're absolutely right. There are some grim conveyancers, but I think a lot of solicitors would say it's the lack of sort of it's the lack of engagement and the lack of knowledge by some agents, which makes life difficult. Because I think also it's the relationship thing. Also, is about, if you know you've got a good conveyancer on the other side, Maurice, you will probably let them get on with their job.
Yeah.
You know, you'll say to the boys, well, actually, you know, no need to sales chase them. When they've got something to tell us, they'll tell us. And in the meantime, we know they're doing their job. And actually, 100%. If, you know, 70% of agents took that view, that would be 70% of calls we didn't have to take.
I couldn't agree more, Lorraine. I think you're absolutely right. And I think, you know, I'm not, as I say, I'm not one of these who says it's their fault. It isn't. It is there's issues on both sides that need to be addressed, and you've addressed it from the legal side. The problem with our side is, I think, particularly in the big firms, in the corporates, they have a lot of, and again, you know, I employ young people, but a lot of young people who've not been trained particularly effectively in understanding what the conveyancing process is, and therefore the only questions they ask, or they've been told, is, right, if everything's in, when you exchange contracts, we get paid. They don't understand the vagaries of a lease, or, as you identify, the problems that still have to be looked at. Just because you've got your searches in, that doesn't mean everything's done and dusted. But there is a distinct lack of education in our industry. And there are a lot of people who are asking and speaking, and I can understand why the solicitors get irritated when they are incredibly busy. They're all, you know, trying to get through a vastly increased workload to meet the deadlines, and it is annoying if you're getting people asking the same silly questions.
Tell you what, Maurice, I would actually put it in a slightly different way as well. I mean, first of all, I would love to go into an estate agent's office and do a day's work in an estate agency. I would absolutely love it. We used to do it years and years and years ago. A lot of local estate agents came and did a day's work with us, but we never had it the other way around. We'd have agents come in here. And of course we did, I have to admit, you know, give them the more, let's just say, crappy files to make some calls on. But I would love to have it the other way around, where you go in and see it from the other side of the fence. Because I often say to the guys, people don't just chase for the sake of it. But having said that, one of the things I think law firms do get annoyed about is not quite so much the scenario which Lorraine has just illustrated, which does happen on a daily basis, but equally where, for example, we say something like, somebody rings out, they're chasing something rather, and we say that, we're waiting to hear from our client, can't get hold of our client. The next day we get another call, same scenario, next day, and you turn around to somebody and say, just out of interest, have you tried? Can you help? Can you try? Oh, no, I didn't think about that. Well, if you're a sales progressor, I might be completely wrong, have it my knickers in a twist, but surely the idea is you're ringing to get a piece of information that you're then going to, if the information is generic and it's as you expect it to be, so be it. But if there is a problem, surely as a sales progressor, the job is to progress the sale and therefore try and help. And
absolutely.
What we find with some agents, and I would say particularly the newer agents, that is definitely a lost art, shall we say. I'm not sure sales progression 10 years ago could be a comparable for sales progression now. It's totally different. I just don't see estate agents acting on some of the information that we give them.
No, and I think you're absolutely right. And I think that this is the thing. I always say to my lads, ask if there is anything that you can do to help. Don't necessarily wait, because some conveyancers will, and I've seen plenty recently who've said, actually, yeah, I can't get hold of the client to do this. Have you got another number? Or can you ring them? Can you chase them? This is what we need. Great. Brilliant. That's the collaborative effort that I'd like to see. Similarly, though, there are a lot who are very po-faced, who don't give you anything. They'll read off a script or whatever they're reading, and then they'll go off and do it. The agent might be able to help if they were asked, can you do this for us? But if they're not, then they've got to ask the question themselves. They've got to force the issue. But you're absolutely right, Stuart. There's a lot that don't understand what is required, and they'll just go, right, okay, thanks, off we'll go. Well, that was a waste of a phone call, waste of everybody's time, and that's why the processes, maybe are not as quick as they could be.
Yeah, it's just quizzical in my head how somebody, why are they ringing to ask you that question? And you give them the answer, and they ring up the next day, and it's the same question with the same answer. But we've had it before. We've asked agents to do something, like they won't also do it. I'm not sure. I mean, this is obviously not all agents, but there's a lot that I would say maybe don't even have sales progression anymore. Not as a comparable to what it used to be anyway.
Maurice, I'm really interested. What changes has your lovely boy brought to the business? Because I can imagine that you'd think you've got it kind of buzzing along. You're successful. You've been doing it for a while. Everything's seems to be fine. So, what would you say are the sort of top two things that lovely boy brought to the party?
Well, it fell really well, and because he's been in now just over 2 years, and obviously there's a vibrancy of youth that I love. I have a lot of young people who we've worked with and we've had in, and they, a lot of people, I don't think they think they're young so that they haven't got the experience, and maybe people don't treat them with the respect that they perhaps can. But if you do, you'd be surprised what you get out of them.
Yeah.
Because Joe, when he came in, he was a bit cocky. Needed the edges knocking off him a little bit. But he really stepped up, because I had a heart attack 18 months ago, and I was really poorly. It was so lucky that I had him in there at the time, and he really stepped up. And I think that's when he matured, because he sort of was left a little bit with a few other staff to do things, because suddenly I was taken out of the business. But he really stepped up, and he has stepped up and continued to do that. So he brings a vibrancy, he brings good ideas. He's not afraid to share his opinions, which I respect. Sometimes we don't always agree. But I made him a director of the business when I was poorly, and he was only just turned 18, nearly 19 maybe. And it was a big responsibility for him. But you know what? He needed that responsibility to mature. And now, I mean, last week we had a record 9 sales agreed in a week. He dealt with them all, rattled them off, you know, you're dealing with 9 people, well, 18 people plus conveyancers and all that. So it's he brings a lot of passion, good ideas, and a vision. And I think he wants to see me out the door so he can switch the name around and change it.
How funny. I think that sounds amazing. Sounds like an amazing thing. It's interesting with kids, isn't it? Because bless her, my daughter's only 13, and but she is really maturing, bless her. But what I see is the one thing I think kids need to be able to do today, more than perhaps anything else, is actually to put the head up, make eye contact, and talk to people. And she can definitely do that. And I kind of think, well, you know, with everything else, you know, if she can do that, that may well, you know, get her through people's door when a lot of kids probably won't. You know,
I mean, it's incredibly tough for young people at the moment. Let's not forget that they probably more than any of us are being affected by what's happening. You know, these lockdowns, they're not able to socialize and do the things that they would normally, or be at school or whatever else. So it's incredibly hard. And I know it has been incredibly hard for Joe. He's a very social animal. He's certainly not one of those who has his head down. Let me tell you, he's very confident, very outgoing. And he's really missing, you know, he plays rugby. So you can imagine the type. And, you know, he's very gregarious, but he can't do any of those things. And so the last 18 months or 14 months have been really tough for people from your daughter's age and younger up to these teenagers, late teens. So it's really, really tough for them. But yeah, you're absolutely right. If they can converse and be confident, I think they'll go a long way.
So we can't let you go, Maurice, without obviously mentioning without mentioning SDLT. So SDLT. So come on, Maurice, pin your colours to the mast. SDLT holiday, good thing or bad thing?
It was a good thing at the time, I think. Personally, and I think you and I have shared the same comments on Twitter about this, Lorraine, is I think it needs more long-term reform.
Yeah.
I don't think this in itself, this was a boost. It gave the market a boost at a difficult time. There'll be some who argued it didn't need it, but I think it has helped. There's no doubt it's kept it going. Maybe it's caused a lot more sales than we anticipated. My worry is what might happen afterwards, although I believe the chance, I think he is going to extend it. All the talk over the weekend seems to be that there may be another month coming on the back of it, just to get these through that are the backlog. So it takes a bit of pressure.
It's going to have to be, though, transactions that have exchanged, surely.
Well, possibly.
Because I worry, and I don't know, I think this may concern you as well, Stu. I just worry that, you know, any extension just you know, extends the pain for conveyancers, but also, you know, it just kicks the ball down the road a bit. But I worry generally that a lot of conveyancers are just going to be under, and Stu and I have talked about this before, just under pressure to exchange. And what that's potentially going to do is, you know, the chickens will come home to roost, you know, in 2, 3, 4 years time, when people try and move again, and all the things that got overlooked in the pressure to exchange now are not going to come out the woodwork for a while. What do you think, Stu?
I disagree. I don't think it will be on exchange. I think the amount of people that will exchange, you know, at the moment with the completion past April will be very minimal. I can't see them looking into it with that kind of foresight. I think it will be a straight month or straight 6 weeks. And I can't see them announcing that till after the budget or during the budget. So I think that's the best we're looking at. I can't see the 6-month extension that's been muted.
No.
And there seems to be very little sort of reference to the debate from those that are up higher. So we'll see, won't we?
I don't think it's on the top of their agenda in the sense that they've got more to worry about. I absolutely agree. I don't think they'll do anything till the 3rd of March. But I mean, people have been sort of, you know, slapping around on social media saying, oh, well, you know, let's extend the deadline for people who've got a mortgage offer in principle, or for whose transaction is, you know, substantially progressed. I think, oh, please, you know, the point about mentioning exchange is obviously it's a finite fixed point that you can identify, whereas anything else, you know, mortgage offer.
I think the problem with exchanging is you still bring into the sort of into the mix people that haven't yet found that property. You know, it is still possible to exchange within 4 weeks. So if he announces that on the 2nd of March, 3rd of March, you could still find people that look to buy a property and get that exchange done. So I can't see that being much of an answer. The interesting thing would be whether he sort of extended it by 6 months or something, on that basis.
And just ruined everyone's holiday. What's your view, Maurice?
Yeah, no, I'm listening to you guys. You're the experts in this side of the thing. But from our point of view, obviously, it has created a false bubble in the market. There's no doubt about that. And I just wonder that if they prick it completely, what will happen after that? So I think they've got to let it down gently. I think another 6 weeks to get through the backlog, if there are still some stragglers, would be sufficient. But I think he's got to put a line under it and say it's not going beyond that date. We've just allowed a few more weeks to get through the backlog, because there is a backlog, but that's it. No new sales, just the ones that are going through now, and that is it. But I do think, as I say, I'd like to see some reforms to the whole outdated model, really. But it produces such a lot of revenue for the exchequer that they're not in any hurry to do anything with it, because it is a revenue spinner.
Yeah,
it's 3.9 billion, I think they quoted, that have been spent on it so far with that savings. So it's a hell of a lot.
So,
I wonder whether they'll reform it. I wonder whether he'll bring in a different kind of banding. Maybe he'll up the limit from 125 to 250, something on those lines. I wonder whether it will be a complete overhaul.
If it was me, Stuart, sorry to interrupt you there. If it was me, maybe I'm going to be a little controversial here. I personally think stamp duty ought to be paid by the sellers, not by the buyers. I really do, because obviously, and I think the banding also needs tweaking in the way it's done, if you're going to do it that way. I just think it's a really outdated model that is not particularly effective anymore.
Yeah, I think if the sellers were to pay the stamp duty, in theory, you'd expect maybe the price of the property to go up, potentially to cover that. Then, would the banks be lending sort of, maybe 80? Would the banks in theory be paying 80% of the stamp duty? So it could be in a full circle. The banks repay us for the banking crisis, maybe.
That may be. There's always going to be two sides to every argument. There's no. It's trying to find what is a fair, reasonable system that works for everybody, because at the moment it's a little lopsided.
I'd like to be wrong, but I can't see at the moment any really detailed strategic thinking coming out of the Treasury on this. I just think they've got too many other things to think about. I think something as big as reforming the structure of property taxes in England and Wales, I can't see happening anytime soon. I think what I found a complete nonsense about this, the headline stamp duty holiday thing, was this save yourself 15 grand. Well, you were only as a buyer going to save yourself 15 grand at the sort of top end of the market, and most buyers don't pay buyers don't pay stamp duty, land tax, or very much anyway. And I think the average saving was something like about 2 or 3 grand. And as Stu said, if you just up the limit, if you just up the lower limit a bit, where you take a lot of those people out, or you reduce their stamp duty, land tax quite a lot, and sort of job done in terms of quite a few short-term objectives, really. But I can't see any big thinking coming out on it, I must say.
No, I think you're absolutely right. Yeah, it's been a very tough time. We don't want to get too political here. It has been an incredibly tough time. Whoever is your government, so they've got a lot on their plate. Maybe major reforms will have to wait until things return to some degree of normality, hopefully, down the line. But I think you're absolutely right, Lorraine. I don't think it'll be on their immediate agenda, that's for sure.
So, Maurice, we could probably we could chat away for a long time, but I suppose we ought to think about wrapping up. So perhaps, given that we're all still in lockdown, it will seem a bit odd watching this in 6 months, I hope. So what's the first sort of proper thing you're going to do when you can, Maurice? When lockdown eases, what's the first thing you choose to do?
Stuart will probably back me up here. I genuinely miss going. We have season tickets at Manchester City. Going to the football, I miss the live games massively, because I don't drink, so pubs are not my thing. But going and watching, the football live with my lads, I've missed that incredibly, I have to say. It's not the same watching it on telly, but for people who don't, obviously like sport or football, I think just, for most people, it will just be able to be mixing with your friends again, going for a meal in a restaurant, doing normal things, going to the pictures, things that I like doing. But we haven't been able to do. It's
But tell you one thing I miss like an atmosphere. So if you go to the football, you've got this sort of electric atmosphere that you feed off, kind of thing. If you go to a busy pub or busy bar, you've got this atmosphere, haven't you?
yeah.
But everything's just dull, isn't it? There's no atmosphere anywhere anymore, is there?
No, it's all very sanitized at the moment, isn't it? There's nothing to look forward to. I'm sure as a Spurs fan, you'd enjoy. You've got Spurs Arsenal coming up or whatever. And it's the build up and you're going and the whole thing, the occasion. It's not just the game; it's the whole thing and the banter that goes with it. So. Yeah, it is. It's tough, but hopefully it's not going to be for much longer, and we'll get back to some form of normality.
Whatever that is. Actually, Stu and I were saying, Maurice, before we came on, before we switched on record, it's going to be interesting, sort of coming out blinking and seeing what's left and seeing what's out there. Really, I mean, I feel desperate for people in retail at the moment, in particular.
There's, and we haven't really touched on it, but we don't want to start another debate. But what it has done to people's mental health and the psyche during this lockdown, I think there'll be a lot of people who will be really terrified to go back into a normal
I agree.
environment. And that's got to be managed very carefully because it is going to be really hard for people. People might think, we just go back to normal. It won't be like that for a lot of people.
I agree. Well, interestingly, I mean, you talk about the mental health issues. I mean, we've talked about that in the context of conveyancers, Maurice, in terms of just, just a huge amounts of pressure that coalface, conveyancers at the coalface have been under for the last sort of, 6-8 months at least. 17-hour days, working weekends, no holiday. Now, some people from the outside looking in, of course, they're going to be saying, yes, well, those people are lucky to have jobs. I completely get that. But, there's going to be there's a lot of conveyancers just sitting, and probably agents too, actually, Maurice, just sort of sitting in their, front rooms, coping with this tsunami of work. And also feeling that terrible uncertainty, that gut-wrenching uncertainty of, if the market falls off a cliff in March, what am I going to do then? I think
absolutely.
The pressure for agents has probably been different in the sense of that, and Stu and I again have talked about this, but the whole stress of going into people's homes at this time. I mean, how have you managed that? I know I just said let's sign off, but I'm interested in that.
I mean, you're absolutely right. It's been incredibly difficult, and I was because I'm on what they class as the vulnerable list. So I was supposed to be at home, but I swear to God, it was messing with my head really badly. But the first lockdown, when it first happened, and when we did the original one, I really struggled with it. I'll be quite honest. I really found it difficult. I couldn't see my lads. I couldn't see anybody. So I took a view that I can't do this. When we were told to reopen, I've got to come back to some form of normality. So I totally understand what you're saying about the mental stresses for people. It was incredibly difficult, and some people haven't been as fortunate as I've been able to come back to a business and an office. There's still people sat at home and have been for quite some time. But then obviously we were allowed to continue going to people's houses, and yes, there's no doubt I was a little bit wary at first, but you just got to do everything properly. Wear my gloves, I put my masks on, I keep my social distancing. A lot of the valuations we were originally doing, people weren't even there. They'd go out and then we'd look round and we'd come back in. So it was very, very difficult, and there's no doubt, it's at the back of my mind. But we've continued and we've worked, and we always ask people, are they comfortable for us to come in, or do they want us, to do? We created virtual valuations. Our working model has changed, as I'm sure everybody's has. But yeah, it has been undoubtedly very, very difficult. But as you say, we're lucky. We have a job. We've been able to continue to be relatively normal. So, I consider myself incredibly lucky. It's the people who haven't been able to that I feel really sorry for. And as you say, all the furlough schemes are going to come to an end very soon. So some of these jobs that have been kept open, sadly, may not even be there when the furlough scheme ends. So there's a lot more pain to come, sadly, I think.
I think so. Well, so Maurice, let's finish on a high, because I saw
a lovely.
Please. I saw a lovely LinkedIn post that you did last week when you were taking a computer into a local school So
Yes.
just tell us about that. Tell us how that came about.
Yeah, absolutely. That was lovely. Those are the little things that really do make a difference. Made me feel really good. You probably know Stephen Brown, who is an industry trainer and mentor, and a lovely, lovely guy. You will not meet a nicer chap in this industry. He came up with this scheme and this idea to get agents to start a fund to create a computer for homeschooling for as many schools and children as possible, because we know there's a lot of children who don't have access to their own computer at home and when they're learning from home at the moment, and it's incredibly difficult for families and the pupils. So he started this and I believe at the last count he's raised nearly £50,000.
Wow.
Hundreds of computers have been donated to schools around the country. Stephen asked me if I would do one, donate some money and do one of the computers, we were happy to do. And obviously we donated it to our local primary school, which is just around the corner from here. And they were absolutely over the moon. They said that funding, they haven't got to do these things. They've got children who they know will benefit. And it was lovely to see how grateful the school were. And just doing little things for your community. I'm very big for community. Agents get a bad press, so if you get an opportunity to do something nice in your community, I was delighted to help. So and it's gone down fantastically well. So if somebody benefits, then I'm over the moon.
Oh, well, that's a nice story. That's a nice story, Maurice. And it's just been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. Thanks ever so much for coming on and having a chat to us. I hope you'll come on again, because it's it's been lovely to talk to you.
Thank you. I really appreciate you asking me. Thanks, guys. Have a really good day.
Not at all. You take care now.
Speak to you again. Take care.
Bye.
Take care, guys.
Cheers,
Bye.
Bye.